What's up, Hoof listeners? Welcome back to the Buffalo Brew. Anthony here. Anthony was at the game last night.
Uh,
I'm sorry.
I was definitely in attendance. It was great to see friends from Denver come to town. That was a lot of fun. I haven't seen them since I moved back. But other than that, probably the only highlight of that trip, unfortunately, because I woke up this morning feeling like a Bills fan again. You know, it's been a few years, so back to the who could we get in the draft? Where are we in position
Oh,
for the
it's draft
draft?
season now, baby. It is
Yeah,
draft season.
wait a minute now. Who do we have left? Who can we pick up? Who's gonna
Yeah,
maybe a head coach? You know,
yeah,
it's unbelievable to have to
yeah.
feel this
That's
way.
interesting because last night after the game, I certainly felt like it was draft season. Right.
Mm,
I'm gonna go start researching the draft.
oh
Who
yeah.
could the Bills get? Oh, we talked about a retooling year next year, but maybe that's now. But then the moves today with Ken Dorsey, I'm like a little confused. You might have to help me get through it. Like, should I have hope again or not?
That is a great question, and I think the only answer we can give is yes, because at least they did something. I mean, what I was serious about leaving the stadium last night, pretty pissed off, obviously, me and 70,000 other people. It was, I kept saying going out, they have to fire Ken Dorsey tomorrow, or this whole organization has gone to shit, right? Because it's just like, come on, this is week after week after week where the defense has done its job on fumes, right? With bums, not no offense, they're playing great, but they, third string guys starting and all this bull
Right.
crap because
Defense
of
is
the
out five
injuries,
starters. Right.
and yet they're playing and keeping us in games, and the offense can't get the shit together, and they're healthy. They
Right.
have no
They're
excuses.
healthy. That's a big one. Big one.
It's just ridiculous, and the same stupid crap keeps happening. "Oh, that worked? Let's stop doing that because it worked." Or, "Oh, this is their weakness? Let's do the opposite thing." In this case, the Broncos give up 480 yards rushing a game? Let's throw the ball down their throats. Like, what are you doing? And don't get me wrong, obviously, we made plenty of mistakes on our own. 4 turnovers
Yeah.
is stupid, right?
Horrible.
It's stupid. It's inexcusable beyond belief. But the fact that you were still in the game,
Had the
thank the
lead.
defense, and you just collapse. I mean, it's sad. It really is. It's just sad, and there's no explaining it anymore. You and I have sat on this show week after week saying, "Well, what's wrong?" "Well, it could be this, it could be that." And all I kept saying was, "I hope they're having an honest conversation in the locker room, and I certainly hope they did with this move too." My guess is Sean McDermott went back and said, "Oh, okay, what are we going to do about this?" And somebody said, "All right, somebody's getting fired. So you got to let somebody go now. This is rock bottom for us. You can't get worse than this."
Yes.
That's the way I look at it, right? Because now we lose every game the rest of the season. Great. I'm happy with it. We got a great draft pick. You know what I mean? That's how I feel right now. We win every game the rest of the season. Great. We're in playoff contention. And that's basically what you have to do to stay there since you decided not to win any conference games, right? So our it's a weird place to be for sure.
Yes.
But you have to have hope with the move. That was your original question. You have to have hope with the move because they did something. And the biggest screw up you could do is nothing and stay hold
It stayed
and give all the
mediocre.
BS
Right.
answers of, "Oh yeah, we're happy with where we're at and we just got to get it together and there are no answers." No, there's an answer, and it's time to try something new. Anything new at this point.
Yeah. So definitely going to get into our opinions on Ken Dorsey and, look at Joe Brady, give you a little background on him, how much of this is on Josh Allen, look at the playoff chances,
Mm.
and then we're going to recap the your pick six. But let's just back up a little bit and go through the game. Coming into the game, you and I were very confident. We've seen the Bills bounce back. We say this stat all the time. They average 10-point win after a loss. The past few weeks, it's been win loss, right? So we fully expected this to be a win.
Mm-hmm.
It's at home, Monday Night Football. You've been struggling. It's not a very good team, especially on defense for the Denver Broncos. This is a great opportunity to try to get some momentum, right? Very first play of the game, fumble James Cook.
after McDermott finally takes the ball with a coin toss, right? He hasn't done that, I don't think, in years, literally.
True.
And we win a coin toss. He takes the ball and one play, and we fumble. And
Yeah, I know. We're never doing that again.
no, I guarantee you, he's never doing that again. Yeah, I guarantee you. So I mean, it's
Yeah.
a bad start, and in the stadium, the Bills fans, we all just collectively looked at each other and said, "Oh boy, this is how this game is going to go, huh? Like, great, here we go." And
Right.
sure enough, it was one of those games that you don't want to remember, but is embedded in your brain because,
Right.
yeah, it didn't get much better through the rest of the game.
For sure. So awful start. You basically give the Broncos points, right? They get the field goal
Oh,
there.
big time, yeah.
Come back.
Defense stopped them, right? Defense held them.
Right, held them. Yep.
Yeah.
That's important.
Field
That's
goal.
kind of the constant throughout. But then the Bills get the ball back and interception. So the first two drives for the Bills offense, back-to-back turnovers.
And it's important to note that first interception was the one that was in Gabe Davis's hands. I'm not talking off his hands. I'm not talking bad throw. That was toward us. Where I was sitting was in the end zone, 200 level. So I had pretty good view of the field, actually. And coming at us, I was livid at that because, I mean, it was in his hands. And all of a sudden,
he's open,
it's
good
not.
throw.
And all of a sudden, it's in the defender's hands. And you know how I feel about Gabe Davis. Can I have my victory lap now, people? Because, I've been saying the same thing for weeks, really for seasons, about Gabe Davis. He's too inconsistent. And now it's at the point where Josh Allen doesn't trust him and shouldn't be throwing him the ball, rightfully so, because he's just too inconsistent. And I hope that, again, we still have to talk about new management, new OC leading the way here, but
new start. Yes,
it's
fresh start.
Gabe Davis has to, and then after the game, for him to be voted a captain of this team, and for him not to talk to the media, I mean, that's ridiculous. Live up to your mistakes. Own it. You're the one who handed the ball to the other team. Own it. And this is not the first game you've cost momentum on. So you need to face the scrutiny and say, yeah, I've been screwing up and I need to learn how not to. It's not that hard, buddy. So, I mean, the fact that he wouldn't do that, I would cut him. If I were the head coach, I'd be like, you're out of here, buddy. I'm sorry. You were voted a captain, and this is what we call leadership. Maybe that's what's wrong with that locker room. They're all so ignorant about what it takes to be a leader. You're voting that guy your leader? He walks out on you? Doesn't even want to own it? Sean McDermott did the same thing last night in his press conference. I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but we got a lot to get to.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Sean McDermott did the same thing, though. Deflected ownership of, accountability. Instead of saying, it starts with me, I did it. He did that today, by the way. I don't know if you saw today's press conference. He did backtrack and say, oh, it starts with me.
Right.
Last night.
Well, in the moment, though, we're all mad at the offense last night, right?
Of course. But that was the worst press conference by a head coach ever in my lifetime. Ever. And we've had some pretty doozies for coaches. All right. But at least they go out there and they say the right things and they own it. All right. But Sean McDermott didn't last night. He deflected blame. He said, oh, we're good. Oh, yeah, practice was great. Nobody cares. You just got your ass kicked. Talk about how bad the offense was. It sounded like he was blaming special teams. Oh, we started as an average of -40. There was so much that went wrong, but he has to own it. The guys weren't ready to play. Again, that's a Sean McDermott problem.
Yeah.
The 12 men on the field at the end. Again, that's a Sean McDermott problem. You did not have your team ready. You did not coach well. You are to blame for this loss, along with other people, obviously, because Dorsey and that offense was inept this game. And again, if somebody wants to mention DVOA, your ass is an idiot, okay? You DVOA your way right up out of here because it's stupid to bring that up now. We're still like third in DVOA and third and third downs. And the Bills had 300 yards of offense. Great. That means nothing. We sucked last night, and the offensive coordinator got axed for it. Rightfully so. I mean, I know I've gone on it, Danny, but I'm still.
You're almost bringing me in because we want to get into the conversation of Sean McDermott and the relationship he has with offensive coordinators, right? We've seen this. He fires Rick Dennison. Him and Brian Daboll not on speaking terms, at least to our knowledge.
He hired Rick Dennison. That was a big mistake, right? Even at the time, we were all like, "Oh, you got to get a good offensive guy." This is who you brought in, But then, So,
but now Ken Dorsey, after only a season and where we had a little over half, he goes 18-8 as a coordinator. and he's fired. So it's a revolving door to this point. And how much of that do you think is on the relationship with Sean McDermott? It sounds like he's not the easiest person to get along with.
Yeah, I don't think he's the type of coach who dabbles in like, oh, I want the offense run my way. Maybe a little bit, right? Obviously, he wants the team to reflect his vision. But a guy like Dayball did his thing and it worked well, right? He had his ups and downs, and people called for him to be fired plenty of times too.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
it's very true. But he still was able to get this offense working and get the most out of it with the guys he had, especially Josh Allen, right? And I think Dorsey, it didn't matter what he was doing; it was just boring, predictable, the whole thing. And it starts with Josh Allen too. Josh Allen this season has been boring, predictable. Yes, he's injured with the shoulder, but that was a reflection of Ken Dorsey's leadership. At least it looked that way.
Right.
And again, these stupid plays where we were talking about way at the beginning of the season, 2nd and 15, run it up the middle, right? Like, what are you doing, right? Like these were ignorant things that were happening, and that's what ultimately cost Ken Dorsey his job in my mind. So
Right.
I don't think it was McDermott's relationship with them, although that could have something to do with it. Even today, he didn't seem too excited about having to let somebody go who's been on his staff for a long time.
Right.
Don't
Been
forget
there
he was
since
the
the beginning,
quarterback
right?
coach too,
Yeah.
right? So I think he has a good relationship with Ken Dorsey. I think that's why it got to this point, because
Okay.
it really was to the point where you had to let somebody go now.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
this is inexcusable.
Yeah.
The people who were calling for Ken Dorsey to be fired weeks ago now look like geniuses, right? They're like, yeah, we tried to tell you to fire him then and get the season going in the right direction. While some of us, including myself, were like, no, okay, let's give him a chance. He's got to figure it out. They'll get
You
going.
have
You
to
and I
figure
don't,
out,
right?
is this a slump or is this the new normal? And to this point, since the weeks 2
Yes.
through 4, it's been the new normal, right? It's been going on for too long. This slump has lasted too long.
Yes.
Somebody's got to take the blame for that.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I said that I think describes it perfectly is it seemed like the entire offense was shot with a tranquilizer. Like all of a sudden they're just numb. Not even like, oh, okay, we're just not as good as we could be. Numb. They were shitty and they didn't care that they were shitty, right? It was beyond belief. It was like the locker room should be exploding right now because they know how much talent they have and how much they're not doing. But it wasn't. They were just like, "Oh, yeah, we'll be fine. Oh, yeah, it'll happen." Like you just been tranquilized, and it's unacceptable. And I'm glad they made the decision to move on from Dorsey, but is that going to solve the problem? That is really the bigger question, because
Right. Well, it's a mixture of things, and like we've talked about this for a few weeks. What is the problem?
you can't. Yeah.
Some of the problem is Josh Allen needs to be managed at times. I feel like Josh
Yes.
Allen needs a strong leader at
Yes.
coordinator, somebody who can, you know,
Yell at him.
yell
To
at
be
him,
frank.
get in his grill. And Dayball did that, and I thought it was effective at times.
Mhm.
Right.
Week
Um,
1, I asked that question back in week 1 when we lost to the Jets, because it didn't seem like anybody could go over to Allen and be like, "Dude, get your shit together," right? And he needed that. He needed somebody to come over to him and say, "What the heck is going on? This isn't you. Stop with the BS. Just focus. Do what's right here." Anything. And it looked like Diggs did at one point, but player to player, is there a coach? I really didn't understand who, when Josh Allen goes off the rails, is the one to keep him in check. And now we're getting an idea of that being a consistent problem on this team, right? There was nobody who could really go to him and say, smack him in the face, that wake up call that we all
right.
need every once in a while to be like, hey, snap out of it, right? Snap out of it. Share,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, we needed it.
Yeah.
He
So
needed it
Josh Allen decision making definitely part of this. Obviously,
big
you
time.
can't fire Josh Allen, but this is a good way to shake it up, right? Because this is Josh's guy. Ken Dorsey was basically hand selected by Josh Allen. It seems
Yes.
like,
Mm-hmm.
and if you don't get the results, I like how Sean McDermott's setting the standard for the team. If you don't get the
Yes.
results, you're out, regardless of who you like or who you get along with. But I think things
Mm-hmm.
changed along the way. Like last year, there was high energy, right? I feel like Ken Dorsey did a really good job overall. He won 13 games, but something's definitely changed since that London game, and
Certainly.
the offense is clearly not believing in what the offense is doing.
Right. And
There's doesn't seem like there's commitment to the routes. They're off a little bit. We saw the fumbles last night. It's just been ongoing.
yes,
They're
and
not buying in.
the predictability factor was huge too, right? I mean, I'm not a X's and O's, oh, I'm studying the tape or I can recognize this formation or whatever, but I watch a lot of football and even I could tell on plays, up, run play up the middle, up, they're going to pass it 3 yards,
Yeah.
up. And I mean, you could see it on the film, on the TV, on in person, and obviously the defenses saw that a lot too. And I think it was Dan Orlovsky who said, this Bills offense has become vanilla and predictable, and showed how, and that teams just know. I mean, you're talking about defenders on the other team coming out literally week after week and saying, oh, we knew exactly what they were going to do, and we had a feeling that was going to be this. And it's like, hey, what's going on here? Why are we all of a sudden vanilla, predictable? Everybody knows what we're doing. That's where you really have a problem, because if they know what's coming, you're going to have a really tough time beating the defense.
Yeah. And that's kind of been like that for a number of games, it seems like. But last night in particular, it's all the drives are passes on every play, or it's James Cook on every play, right? There's just no rhythm, no balance.
Yeah.
It just was very sloppy from a schematic standpoint. Is what it seemed like. I mean, obviously the turnovers and things like that. I mean, it was a mess, right? Latavius Murray is having a great game. Kind of disappeared after James Cook came back, and they just kept giving him the ball.
Exactly. Right. I mean, it was thing after everything. As I said again last night, the whole offense was broken. Everything went off the rails. It was like, oh, okay, we're going to try that. No, okay, we'll do that. And that is why they had to take the drastic action today. I don't think Dorsey's record reflects the issues, especially of this season, right? You could say he went 18-8, sure. That is not really a reflection of the collapse that we've seen of the offense this year, right? And again, everybody can throw their advanced stats out and say we're getting this many yards and we're doing that. If you have a pair of eyes and you like football, you know that this offense was horrendous, right? We had one good game against Miami, really, and a couple of inferior opponents beyond that we probably should have beat by more, realistically. But it's just been downhill, and again, we needed to make this change. Ken Dorsey had lived out his time beyond what it should have been, really. If we had done this 3 weeks ago, we might have saved the season. Now we're talking about scraping and clawing to even be in contention again. Not a good place to be for the team.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, the problem is if you fire him 3 weeks ago, it doesn't look good, because it's like,
right. Why all of a sudden would you just fire?
Too narrow-sighted, right? So
exactly.
And who knows what happened? I mean, it sounded like in the press conference with Sean McDermott after the game that he had confidence in Ken Dorsey, right? He did say that. Yeah, I still have confidence in Ken Dorsey.
He did.
So
and I was
maybe the conversation Monday morning might have led to, look, this isn't working.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I hope. Either the players, maybe it was ownership. I doubt it, because Pegula is really hands off. And, another comment that I've been making to a lot of people is this organization, the Buffalo Bills, really, really miss Kim Pegula. The injury, the medical issue she suffered took her away from the team. She was the heart and soul of the top of the chain, right? I mean, she knew everybody's name. We all knew her personality. As much as we love the Pegulas, she was the face, right? And he was more of just the owner, right? The guy.
Certainly. In the meetings every day, right? At the facility every day.
Yes, right. And now that she's gone, there's this void of like, is there really leadership at the top? And would Pegula be enough to step in and say, like, hey, now we got to do something, right? He's no Jerry Jones. That's for dang sure, right? And that's a good thing. But when it comes to something like this, we don't know where it came from. If it was McDermott's decision alone, or if, somebody was like, look, this can't happen. Or maybe he listened to the players and they were like, they had that players only meeting. Maybe they figured it out. They aired their grievances and they were like, look, we still didn't get our shit together. So we got to have a coaching change. And McDermott did.
Yeah, that's as a sign of a good leader. I mean, we'll figure out if it's right or wrong. But it seems like making the change resets the team. It's going to reset the locker room. There might have been player input as well, right? You don't just fire a coordinator without player input. I think Sean McDermott's that type of leader.
Yeah.
We had concerns in the offseason. Maybe Diggs doesn't like Dorsey. That was a rumor, right? We'll never know the truth. But
we'll see now.
Right. We're going to find out now. But like the move just because it does remind everybody there is a standard in Buffalo, right? McDermott does coach at a high standard, and if you don't get that standard, nobody's safe. You know what I mean? But let's get back into Josh Allen a little bit because I think we know Josh now, right? He's going to have a lot of turnovers, but yeah, he's going to have a lot of great plays. It seems this season, at least through these weeks where the offense has been in a slump, more turnovers, less big-time plays. What is going on with Josh Allen? Should we be concerned that maybe he's been overhyped or maybe he's hit his peak? Is there a way is he going to bounce back?
I am confident that we will see the player we saw before, right? So I'm confident he will come back. There is cause for concern. People who are worrying and panicking are thinking Cam Newton, right? They're thinking, okay, he's dealing with all these injuries now. He's been getting hurt. Maybe this is going to be how his career goes, and he's never going to be that elite guy for a long period of time. I'm not at that level, but it's certainly warranted to start thinking that. He's dealt with these injuries. Last year, we know the ligament. This year, the shoulder. And it's affecting him on the field. Again, you don't have to be a medical doctor to look at Josh Allen throwing the ball deep and say, that ain't the same guy that it was 2 years ago throwing that ball deep. He's not accurate with that anymore. There's something going on with his shoulder, right? And I'm worried. I'm certainly concerned that is a bigger issue than they're letting on, that the injuries are adding up and they're not handling it properly. I would rather they sat him 3 weeks ago when he injured his shoulder and said, we're done. We're done. We don't care. It's Josh Allen that matters. We want the next 10 years to matter with Josh Allen, not this season. This season is irrelevant beyond when you're looking forward to the next 10 years of Josh Allen. So you sit him. Maybe Kyle Allen can go 500, and that's what you need from a backup quarterback usually. And then let him heal whatever it may take, 4 to 6 weeks, or the whole rest of the season, so be it. Then you punt the season, you get a good draft pick, and you're better next year with Josh Allen. But my concern is that they keep trusting him, saying, oh, yeah, I can play. Oh, yeah, I can do this. And they're not trusting, the full medical quality of saying, hey, surgery is going to make this better ultimately. And this is what you need to be 100% again. And the on-field, like, okay, our own eyes are telling us you can't do this as well as you were doing it before. You can get away with it because you are unbelievably talented, but you're not as good as you were before because it's clearly affecting you. So that part of it is certainly concerned. And then the other side of the coin, not physically, would then be mentally. Is there something going on mentally with Josh Allen? Again, we've talked about it on the show week after week. The way he looks on the sideline this year, completely different. He looks mopey and sad, and I get it, he's in the zone and all that, but that's not how we've seen Josh Allen before. Even when he's sitting there by himself, he usually has that fire in his eyes, and we're not seeing that this year. So whatever it is mentally that he has going on, there was a good suggestion that I saw that maybe he needs to start talking to a sports psychologist, somebody who can actually work with him on that kind of thing to get him going again, to find his inner fire again, because he's in his own head, and that much is clear. We don't know what's going on. Maybe he's thinking about his relationship. Maybe he's thinking about what he had for dinner or whatever you want to say. Something's going on in his head that he's not in the same headspace that we've seen before either. And maybe that had to do with coaching, and this is a change that'll be for the better for him, but the mental side of it can be a concern too, but is something that is much more reasonable to have to work through, right? All of us are going to have issues like that. He's still in his mid-20s going through life just like the rest of us. And, I hope that part of it does get addressed and
so you
properly.
Think it's temporary stuff. It's injury. It's he's in a mental slump.
You're
not concerned at all that Josh Allen makes bad decisions often. Throwing the ball into triple coverage, right? We've seen it. He had an
Yes.
interception. He threw the very same play and almost had another interception in this game last night.
I will tell you
I mean,
that
that's something we've seen from Josh Allen consistently.
being
Right?
at this
I feel
game,
like Dorsey didn't do a good job of managing it. I thought, well, how can you, right? You got to execute the play. But Daboll did a better job of managing those bad decisions, right? I think that's part of his game. It's never going to go away.
yeah, I mean, and that's okay. I just want Josh to be Josh. I don't care if he throws an interception a game as long as he's able to do the positives that we know, right? He doesn't have to be the lowest interception guy in the league. A lot of the greatest quarterbacks of all time aren't that guy, right? Look at Brett Favre. I mean, come on, people think of interceptions with him, but without a doubt, he's one of the greatest of all time ever, right? Like that's it. He's up there. And the one thing that was concerning, again, over the last few weeks, being at this game, having the view I did of the whole field, Josh Allen missed a lot, almost every wide open guy on the field. Instead, he went to, it seemed like he had what I called Tua syndrome, right? First read, or last week he even said in his press conference, I'm executing the plays as called, so he clearly wanted to go to that guy, right? Instead of being like, oh, you know what? This is good coverage over here. I know the play's supposed to go to him. I'm going to keep my eye over there. Boom, look, he's wide open. I'm going to throw it to him. And we've seen Josh do that before. Again, that's something I think he can overcome. But these things are concerning. If I talk to a Bills fan now, 3 weeks ago, if they would have said, fire Ken Dorsey, fire Sean McDermott, I would have been like, well, you're overreacting. No, right? If they would have said Josh Allen isn't himself, you're overreacting. Calm down. Let's wait. Now, I think if a person came to me and said, I'm legitimately concerned that Josh Allen is not the guy who we thought he was, that he's not going to be like we saw a few years ago or his best self, I think they have a legitimate concern because of the injuries, because of the mental health, because he seems to be going backwards all of a sudden when he was that guy who took a step forward every year. But I am 80% optimistic and 20% now maybe concerned, whereas I'm not going to discount those who are very highly concerned. I have faith and have seen it with my own eyes that Josh Allen is capable of these things, and I believe that he is capable of getting back there when he has the right balance of what we've already talked about.
Right, and I think some of that's what's gone into the decision to fire Ken Dorsey is you do have this once-in-a-lifetime quarterback who has such great capability at the position, but the scheme just seems hard, and we've talked about this for a number of weeks now. The first read's Diggs, and you're expecting Diggs to get out of a jam and get open. It doesn't happen 100% of the time, and then it seems like Josh gets to a second read, not there, no one's open, gets to his third read and it's a check down and they get tackled and lose yardage. So some of that is scheme where you can dial something up for Diggs or Gabe Davis, put them in a good position and make it easier for Josh, right? It does still feel like it's a lot on him, right? Like I think Dan Orlovsky said you're expecting a 10 all the time. On a scale of 10 for these receivers to get open. And that's not good offensive, that's not a good way to draw up a game plan, right? Because again, I think they are having Josh, hey, don't run as much, don't take as many hits, but that's hard when no one's getting open, right? In the scheme that you have dialed up. Puts him in a weird spot there, right? So still leading the league in a lot of statistical categories. So you could say he's playing within the scheme.
Sure.
But there's just no big plays. No, there's few big plays, right? We've seen occasional pops here and there, but it just doesn't seem like it doesn't seem as effective as it has been in years past.
Yes. And part of that is game plan, right? A lot of that is game plan in my mind, right? Kincaid, and we've talked about it week after week. Kincaid and Shakir are playing very well right now. Dorsey should have been like, look, these are the guys who are reliable. We need to get the ball to them. And Diggs is obviously our guy no matter what. So, we're going to set up the game plan like this, and these guys are going to get the ball, and, the run game's going to balance that out. And it didn't, right? It never really clicked. It always felt like they were game planning the wrong way. It's like, okay, we're going to force it to, one of these guys instead of one of the guys who's playing better right now. Or we're going to try and force it into coverage rather than find the open man kind of thing. And it goes both ways. That is on Josh. That is on the
Right.
coordinator. But to me, most of that is game plan. So hopefully now, and Sean McDermott has his hand in game plan too. It's not like
Sure.
Dorsey was running the show on game plan on offense, right? And hopefully with the change, we see something improve there. Maybe a little
Right.
more freedom to Josh Allen. That's what I've been saying. Just give him the ball and tell him to go out there and play. Turn the microphone off. No called plays. Get out there and you call the play and
Right.
have fun with it. Just let him loose.
Yeah, and I think the last piece is probably the expectation of the offense has gone up a little bit, right? We talked about in the offseason, there's more talent on this offense than there has been in previous years, right? Still winning 13 games, still, leading the league in a lot of offensive stats categories, but it's just not being executed right now. Like you add Dalton Kincaid, James Cook's healthy, you have a running game this year that really has been underutilized, right?
Yeah.
You just haven't had that power run game in years past. So that's two different dynamics to the offense that really haven't taken advantage of, I feel like.
In the
Obviously,
right ways, right? It
right,
always
right,
felt like the wrong circumstances. Like, oh, let's
right,
run when we should pass and pass when we should run. Yeah.
right. And last year they're scrambling to find a slot receiver. Like Cole Beasley comes in late in the year. It was so bad, right? Comes off the street and plays. So I think some of it is there was an expectation that this offense would be better, and it just hasn't gotten to that level, right? It feels underutilized, and it feels just feels like something's off. Obviously, whether players aren't buying in, whether it's scheme, whatever it is, something
Yeah.
had to be shaken up.
I mean, you also bring in players in the offseason like Sherfield and Hardy, and they don't ever see the field, basically. I mean, you paid these guys to play a role, and in the preseason really built them up as these, maybe not every down players, but certainly key role players and skill players playing to their abilities. And yet maybe they see the ball once a game. And, again, we don't know whose call that was, but hopefully we are now able to better utilize the tools in the tool belt and don't just keep going to the same thing over and over again.
Right. So now, what changes we need to make? Right. Okay. Enter Joe Brady, quarterback coach. Some good, some bad with him. Was with Carolina in 2020. I think Sam Darnold year. He had a quarterback with, had
I
Sam
didn't make
Darnold
it through
there.
the season, right? He was
No,
fired
he
in
was
December.
fired. Yep, got fired. And then he was on the LSU team though with Joe Burrow,
Yes, that's his claim to
Jamar
fame,
Chase,
really.
Justin Jefferson. And then he actually was an offensive assistant under Sean Payton in 2017 for New Orleans.
Oh, shoot. So he had
So
the
again,
connection in that game.
Those Carolina years were a little weird because quarterback issues and things. But if you can take anything from the LSU team and bring it in here, that would be ideal. But definitely an uphill climb for Joe Brady. What are your thoughts on offense moving forward?
My initial thought is you inherited a mess. I mean, right now, you and I could walk in the door and it would be a relief, right? They'd be like, okay, hey, look, we got something new. All right. And Joe Brady is at least familiar with the play calling and knows how to talk to the players and all that. So he at least has that going for him. And I think he should go into it with the mindset of this is my opportunity and I have nothing to lose, right? If he does that, then I'm sure he's going to maximize his creativity and his role in the offense. He doesn't have to be Brian Daboll, and for God's sake, I hope he isn't. I think that a lot of what Dorsey did was on trying to keep up with Brian Daboll, and right now, that's not what this team needs. They need a new person to take the reins and do it their way. And again, I think that the best thing for Joe Brady is that this is pretty much a clean slate. No matter what happens next week, it doesn't get worse, right? Like it literally, you could be terrible, you can lose, you can whatever, and it doesn't get worse. So you can only start building from here. And I think that I hope that he's able to capitalize on this opportunity, bring a different energy, bring his mindset instead of the Daboll Dorsey mindset, and see what he can bring to the table and really test him out as could this be the next future offensive coordinator for going forward, because this is really only an audition for the rest of the year.
Right.
Really.
And you're going to have to make changes fast because it does seem defenses have the Bills' number right now. They know exactly how to play Josh Allen. We've seen anything from double quarterback spy. We still see the 2 deep safeties taking away the deep ball. So, I mean, Joe Brady, I think, can just walk in and any change at this point would be a benefit, right? Because the offense has just been figured out, it seems like.
Yeah.
And that happens, right? And that happens when you've had continuity like this. Some of the downsides of having such long continuity. There's a lot of film out there. There's a lot of ways to get Allen's tendencies. What plays does he like? You still see some of those concepts from 2 years ago. You know what I mean?
And again, Allen is good enough to overcome all of that with the right coaching and prep, right? He's not one of these, I mean, don't get me wrong, he can do anything on the football field, but he's not a super genius mind at quarterback, right? It's not like he's analyzing answers or he sees everything on the field. It's more about his talent and ability to do anything. So I think the prep matters when it comes to Josh Allen. And Joe Brady has obviously been a big part of that already because he was the quarterback's coach. So again, my hope is that he was doing what he needed to do for Dorsey, and now he has his own ideas to innovate and bring something new to that, rather than say, oh, I was already part of this and I was actually part of the problem, so now it's going to be more of a problem instead of a change for the better. And I think that he's going to have the rest of the season to kind of figure that out. And, we'll see how it turns out for him. If the first couple games don't look good, it's not like the world is over and Joe Brady isn't the guy. Now he needs to be fired.
Right.
No,
it's an opportunity.
Let him get the bearings first, right? And then we can start judging him. And maybe he has a good stretch run at the end and you're like, okay, this guy has figured it out and he can be the one going into next season. My concern with that is Sean McDermott's ass is on the line now too, right? So we don't know what's going to happen if the Bills don't make the playoffs at the end of the season. A lot of fans are already calling for Sean McDermott's head, and I certainly think that is warranted at this point. You can make a laundry list of reasons to fire Sean McDermott. Bills Mafia will always be grateful to Sean McDermott. 50 years from now, I hope he comes into the stadium in a walker and we all cheer for him, because without a doubt, he is the only one who brought us single-handedly from the pits of despair, of embarrassment, and where nobody wanted to be and all that, and change that culture and change that point of view. So all of Bills Mafia will forever be grateful to Sean McDermott, no matter what happens going forward. But the facts of the matter are, if he doesn't make the playoffs this season, he could be fired. And if that happens, likely Joe Brady is out the door too, right? Because that's his staff. Whoever they bring in is going to want their own staff. And this will be a start from scratch moment. So the best case scenario is Joe Brady comes in, catches on. He's going to get better as the weeks go on, and then perfectly set up to go into the playoffs. We make the playoffs and go on a stretch run and win the Super Bowl, right? That is still a possibility right now, believe it or not.
Sure.
I know Bills Mafia doesn't want to hear that.
A lot needs to happen.
Certainly, but there is a path there for that to happen.
Right. Well, it's not that far-fetched. Anytime you have a franchise quarterback at the elite level, you're always in the mix. But you're going to go through highs and lows during the season. It just seems like this low has lasted a lot longer than others. And back to Sean McDermott, it just seems, he's actually coaching, some of the best of his career. He got 5 defensive starters out. Defense is still stepping up.
Correct. Whoa. Pause for a minute. He's coaching. He is the best defensive coordinator in football.
That's what I was going to say.
He is the best defensive coordinator in football. When you say coaching, he's got to remember that he's also the head coach.
Right.
Because he's not
a little bit worried about this, with Sean McDermott taking over play calling duties on the defense. Is it going to take away from the holistic picture of the team, right? And maybe you're seeing some of that.
Yes,
right?
that is.
After the game, is very defensive about the defense and how they played. And they played well, to their credit. But definitely the special teams and offense have been struggling as of late. The other thing is Sean McDermott hasn't had a losing season except for 2018. So this feels almost like a Marty Schottenheimer type situation where you just need a change because it's stale. It's not about the record or the past.
Yes, and it could happen.
And it's a lot of it's the league's changed. All the
Yeah,
competitive teams are offensive head coaches. All
yeah,
of them.
it's crazy. It is. And again, kudos to Sean McDermott for bucking that trend and being who he is. But one of the changes that I've heard discussed is, will he name a defensive coordinator for the reason you mentioned, right? Maybe he'll let somebody else take over the play calling so he can focus on the big picture. I think the problem is he knows he can do it better, which is probably true, right? Without a
Yeah,
doubt.
yeah.
He is better at it and he's doing a great job with it. There's no reason to change that while you're screwing up the other thing, right? Keep that going well, try and figure out the other thing. And I think that's his approach right now. But it could ultimately end to his downfall, because the mistakes that they're making this year are a lot of big picture type mistakes that the
Sure.
head coach would normally handle.
Well,
You
it's
talk about
situational
development on the
football
field.
too, right? And I think that's they haven't been good at situational football. Just for an example, scoring a touchdown with 2 full minutes to go in the game, knowing it's only going to be a 1-point lead.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get that clock down as much as you can.
Yes.
And I know it's not ideal. Take the points, take the lead, trust the defense, and that's probably the mentality they had. And but got to be a little better in the situations, right? I've noticed that the past few weeks, the situational football has been horrible.
Always. Sean McDermott's from the beginning. He does not manage clock well. He does not manage timeouts well. He is conservative as conservative can be at his core, right? If there's 40 seconds and 3 timeouts, go to the locker room, because he's not going to try to do anything. And that's just who he is, right? And I think that that's a detriment. I've never been a fan of that. He's never going to throw a challenge flag, unless last week he threw it for the first time against all odds when he probably shouldn't have. But that's just who he is as a head coach. But it's worked for him. He's won games. He's got the record he has and the reputation he has. But he has his flaws too. And I would love to have a head coach who is better at managing those things, because ultimately, when you think about the Bills' biggest blunders under Sean McDermott, a lot of it comes down to that type of thing, right? We're talking time on the clock. We're talking, oh, you didn't do this, or clock management, or personnel. It's one thing after another, big picture wise, and it's unfortunate that, again, I think that's why there is enough data now to say, look, we could fire Sean McDermott and move on to try and get something better. And Sean McDermott has brought us to this place where now we're not the exiled place, but we are the ones where the next big offensive coordinator would love to become the next head coach of the Buffalo Bills, right? You name the guy. I mean, there's plenty out there that are head coaching candidates. I think that's the route they would go ultimately if they end up firing McDermott. But the hope is that he can turn it around.
In your opinion, would it be a package deal? Is Brandon Beane gone too? Or is Brandon Beane doing the firing?
Well, it's certainly not Brandon Beane doing the firing. I don't think that's the dynamic that they've established, right? Sean McDermott was brought in first. Brandon Beane was basically his pick to be GM. However, I do think there's a chance that Brandon Beane could keep his job and Sean McDermott could be let go, right? Again, the problem is that void at the top of what is Terry Pegula willing to do, and will he actually be the one to make that decision and say, we need to move on from this coach? He's reached his ceiling, and this isn't enough for this team, and this team is too good, and needs to be able to move on now. I don't think that he would. I don't think that he would. So who then would make that decision? I don't know. I think that would be ideal, to keep the GM and fire the coach and see if another coach could do it. I want Brandon Beane to stay.
It's a tough business, right? Relationships, they matter, but I think everyone in the NFL understands that, your relationship's not going to keep your job as a head coach, right?
And you would want Beane to be involved, certainly, in hiring the next head coach. He doesn't have to handpick his guy or whatever, but if Beane stays, you would want him to hire somebody that can communicate as well with him as he does with McDermott, right? You have to have that connection at coach and GM, or the whole thing falls apart. I mean, that's the biggest question to me moving forward, is who would ultimately make that call? Even if everybody agreed Sean McDermott should be fired at the end of the year,
and it doesn't
mean it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's a tough one, because Sean's really done a great job. He's
Yes.
a product of old school mentality,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And
And the
that's
league moves
gonna get
it's
him in
moving
trouble.
so fast
Right,
forward,
you got
right? Like
backup quarterbacks putting up 30 points a game. I mean, it's like, yeah, that's the new NFL. And Josh Dobbs, good example, hasn't even been with the team that long.
he's amazing. Yeah, right. That's
So it's
one of the
like,
guys I've been talking about all year, right? So he's yeah, you definitely need to have the league has moved offensive mindedly without a
yeah,
doubt. And we've known that for years, since before Sean McDermott was hired.
yeah.
But
I'm trying to think
um
around the league. Is there any defensive minded coach who is going to win the division this year? I don't think there's one. I mean, John Harbaugh is kind of a neutral. He's a special teams coach,
yeah,
right?
I have Dan Campbell with the the Lions. I
Okay,
mean, you would call him a defensive guy, I guess. And yeah,
I
so
guess, but he
it's
played
not a
tight
lot.
end. He coached offense.
Yeah, did he coach offense? He was an offensive. Yeah, I guess, but
I
still,
think,
I mean,
yeah,
I guess then he would be checked in the offensive box. I think of more of the biting kneecaps, changing tone on defense, but he has been offensive geared as well, especially in Detroit. Yeah, it's tough. It's not
yeah. They're
really,
all offensive.
really.
They're all offensive minded, right? Brandon Staley, another defensive coach with a good quarterback, is struggling. So it's really the league has just changed, right? And that happens. Bill Belichick's struggling.
Yeah, the defensive coaches are on their way out for sure. It's. I hope Sean McDermott can overcome that. I know, I believe that Sean McDermott has what it takes to overcome that. Now, whether he does or not is a different story. It's not like, "Oh, if you're defensive minded, you just can't get it done." That's not true. I think he's just got to dot his I's and cross his T's when it comes down to it, and then he'll be able to get over that hump. But this is without a doubt the biggest challenge he's faced as a head coach. Is he losing the locker room? All this talk, we've never heard things like this under Sean McDermott, and now you are. So he needs to be able to show this was just a blip on the radar. We needed to get the bumps and bruises out and figure out the issues, and one of those was our offensive coordinator, and now we can move forward with what we wanted it to be. I know that Sean McDermott is thinking in the back of his head, if I can find a way to make it to the playoffs and Matt Milano comes back and Daquan Jones might come back, I don't care what the offense does anymore. We're going to win games. We're going to win games in the playoffs with that. And I think that's what he's thinking in his mind, but now the path to get there is coming at the worst time. You have to go through the hardest part of the schedule with this new change and turmoil. So it's an uphill battle for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Yeah, so that brings us to Bills' playoff chances after this loss. I feel like during the game, when you realize the Bills are going to lose, you get that gut feeling that the season's over,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because this was, for all Bills fans, I think this was an expected win. Even though we know the
Yeah.
NFL, anything can happen. It did happen, but I think going into the game, everyone thought that this would be a win. So, what do the Bills need to do? They've made it hard on themselves. I feel like every game is very important now for them. Taking a look at the remaining schedule here.
There you
Jets,
go.
right? Tough one right out the gate. Got to have it, right?
You have to. Yes.
Got to have that one. Then you go at Philadelphia.
I mean, the Bills have 5 wins right now. So if we're going through this, I mean, Jets, you have to win. That's 6 wins, right?
Yep.
It's at home. Then you're going to Philadelphia. You hope they have a bad day, but
Well,
presumably,
McDermott's from the area, right?
yeah, originally
His
coached
brother's
there,
still a
right?
soccer coach there. Yeah. He coached there with Joe Johnson, right? On Andy Reid, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that could be a homecoming, shock the world type moment. I mean, because the Bills are good at being the underdogs, right? We've seen that historically.
Yeah, absolutely.
This year might be different, but I don't think it's that weird to say they could go to Philly and shock the world.
Yeah.
Would I put money on it? No, but not far fetched. So let's mark that one as a win.
Bills
7-5.
Chiefs. You know what's interesting about Bills Chiefs now? That has become, if you said Bills Chiefs in the offseason, people would have said, oh, they're going to score 60 points, and it wouldn't be far fetched. that has now become a defensive battle game. A defensive battle. The
Chiefs
Chiefs
defense is good.
have an amazing defense this year. The Bills defense, as we're talking, have kept them in every single game, and I could see them doing that against the Chiefs as well. You keep Kelsey in check. They don't, Mahomes, he's very good, obviously, but you limit him. I could see our defense doing that, and it end up being like a 16-10 game or something stupid.
And the Bills lose.
But yeah, exactly, right? You have to be able to pull the rabbit out of the hat. I think of the Eagles and Chiefs, one of those is a must win. You must win one of those games. You lose to the Eagles, you must beat the Chiefs. But you have to be 2-1.
And that all assumes you beat the Jets. If you lose to the Jets, it's over. We don't care anymore.
Correct.
Don't care anymore.
Then you're tanking for the best draft pick.
Yes.
Then you go get Josh Allen the surgery he needs and tank the season.
All right, so we got 7-5. We had Jets, Eagles, surprising victory in Philadelphia. We're gonna have an L here for the Chiefs. 7-6.
You are. I can't say.
You think they win all three after that performance last night? No chance.
If they come out, you don't know what happens if they start building in the right direction with Joe Brady, and they're like, oh, all of a sudden our offense is getting the right.
I mean, that's the best case scenario, but still, I don't think that happens. The odds that happen are very low.
Well, let's put it this way. There's no doubt to me the Bills are better than the Jets. The Eagles and the Chiefs are better than the Bills right now.
Yeah. I got them surprisingly beating the Eagles.
I think 2-1 is a must. Let's make it that way. Yes? We can both agree with that.
Same result.
2-1 in those threes is a must.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. So you're 7-6. 7-6. Going home game at Dallas with Dallas. That's an L.
What? I don't know. I've liked this matchup from the beginning of the year. No. I think
Bills are outmatched, I think, against
Dak
Dallas.
Prescott is not a great quarterback. Their team is not playing well on offense. They rely on their defense, and
defense is so good, though.
It's a damn good defense. But our offense pairs well with that defense. We just talked about how we have the weapons. They just need to utilize them correctly. And I think that is a weakness of the Cowboys when they've gone against teams that can do multiple things and they can't get a big lead on them defensively. That's where they start to lose. And I do think that's a W for the Bills.
I don't know how you can say that after watching this team last night.
Because it's a different
Did you watch the game? You were at the game.
I was at the game. It's a different team today.
The Cowboys
are not that good. The Eagles and Chiefs are better than the Bills. I'm not convinced the Cowboys are better than the Bills. They are the Bills of the NFC.
The Broncos are better than the Bills.
No, they're not. They just won the game. That doesn't make them better.
The Bills were horrible last night. I don't know how
they
you
were.
Can say they're going
to They were absolutely atrocious.
I think they go 2-2 in the next 4 games.
Well, then the season's over, and you're packing it in, and you hope you lose the rest.
That puts you at 7-7.
The season is over. If you have 7 losses, the season is over. Okay.
Well, then the season's over.
So then there you go. Chargers, Bills, Dolphins.
It's not that weird to say this Bills season's over.
So let's get to the end of it then. You're saying Chargers, Bills, Dolphins.
I think they beat the Chargers. They beat the Chargers, beat the Patriots, lose to the Dolphins. 9-8.
Well, then that's not nearly good enough. You've just had the worst case scenario, Eric.
I think that's best case scenario at this point.
What the? You're crazy. That is worst case scenario. You've lost a good draft pick. We're not getting a receiver in round 1 now, thanks to Eric. And now we're not making the playoffs by even the slimmest of margins.
I don't agree with the strategy, but that's where the Bills are, right? They're a good team who's underperforming. It screams 9-8.
Correct. But realistically, if this team could even play up to half of its potential on offense,
sure.
We beat the Jets. We beat one of the Chiefs and Eagles. We're better than the Cowboys. I think we win that game. You have to beat the Dolphins at the end if it matters. But even then, even if you get to 11 wins, you might not make the playoffs because you have so many conference losses. The best path to the playoffs for the Buffalo Bills right now is if the Dolphins trip and fall on their face. Because they're coming to the easy part.
Right.
The best path to the playoffs. The best path to the playoffs for the Bills is if the Dolphins falter and we win the division. If we beat them at the end of the year, to tie in victories. We
Buddy,
will have the tiebreaker and win
you
the
got to
division.
let the division go. It's over. The race is over. It's over.
It's not.
The Bills had
because-
another AFC loss last night.
Exactly. So what you're saying is the wild card is impossible. You cannot have a wild card team that's won one divisional game. We have one divisional win. You're not going to the playoffs as a wild card. The fucking Texans are going to beat you because they have more wins in the AFC than we do.
Yeah, but I think they still play a lot of divisional games, just like the AFC North. They all play each other in the next few weeks. The AFC is so good this year. All the teams are going to beat each other up.
Even if every NFC team remaining beats the AFC opponent, the Bills still have their backs against the wall when it comes to the wild card. We would need 1,000 different positive things to happen to make the playoffs with 10 wins.
You're not winning the division. I just don't see a path.
I don't either. That's the problem.
So season over was what we're saying.
No. In my best case scenario, you beat the Jets, you beat one of the Eagles or the Chiefs, you beat the Cowboys, and you win out. You beat the Chargers, Patriots, and Dolphins. That brings you to 11 wins. You're a wild card team. Congratulations. If you have 10, you're sweating it out. You need to rely on 1,000 different scenarios with every other team that's better than you in the AFC. And that includes, to me, I mean, you're talking now, if the Bengals, pick a team. So let's just say the Bengals win the division. The Browns are likely to make the playoffs. The Ravens are likely to make the playoffs, right? And probably that means the Steelers are the odd man out in that scenario.
And probably the Bengals, right?
The Bengals win the division. I said pick one, right?
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
Bengals win the division.
We could have said the Browns win the division. I don't care.
Ravens
one of them wins the division. Two of them are probably wild card teams. And the other one is out. I don't care what order you put it in. The Steelers win the division. I don't care at this point. It doesn't matter. The point is, here's the AFC standings. The Buffalo Bills are dead last. You know, when it comes to contention, the Texans are going to make the playoffs. I really believe that now.
They still have to play the Jaguars. It might not matter, but one of those two teams will have a loss there.
But they're playing.
Texans are good. I agree.
Just like I've been saying for weeks, Eric, and last week. So absolutely, I'm on that train. The Houston Texans are a damn good team, and they need to be respected for it. They're playing good football because they're a good team. And they're so
I'm not here to talk about them.
If the Texans played the Bills right now, the Bills would lose. The Texans are a better team. And their schedule, they're going to be in contention to win the wild card.
Right.
So they're going to be right there.
You're contradicting your own point. I said Bills 9-8. You're saying, no, they're better than that, but they're not as good as the Texans. So it's like,
if the Bills finish 9-8, I give them a 0% chance of making the playoffs.
Exactly. That's the conclusion we're coming to.
Yes.
They're not making the playoffs.
Not as a 9-8 team. If you have 10 wins, you need a miracle to happen to make the playoffs.
There is a spot, though, where
if you have 11,
Cleveland and the Bengals don't make it in because they play their division, it's really tough. Or Pittsburgh and the Bengals, right? There's two of those teams could fall out below Buffalo.
Correct, but who
That's
are you
your
putting
only
in?
scenario.
So you're saying you need two teams to falter. I don't think it's the Texans. I believe they're playing the best football of a lot of these teams right now. Right? They're better than Cincinnati, than Indy, than Buffalo.
I'm not sure if their best is going to be good enough, right? That division's so tough. It's just they're going to beat each other up. They're going to have big wins and they're going to have some losses. Right?
I was talking about the Texans. You're talking about
I was
Cincinnati.
talking about the Bengals. My bad.
So that's why I think the Texans are cemented to me into that 7th seed, basically. Right? So to me, they're gonna stay there. They have no reason to move from there.
And that's assuming everything goes well, right?
Correct. Yes, assuming they don't have injuries or whatever.
I think they still play the Colts.
They're better than the Colts. I think they beat the Colts.
One of those two teams will lose, go behind Buffalo.
Correct. I think that's the Colts. We all agree.
Right,
nobody thinks the Colts are a playoff team right now, even though they're playing
well. The AFC North, I think two teams will fall behind Buffalo if Buffalo can get to 9-8, right? Assuming it's going to be a tight race, and that's just the scenario the Bills put themselves in.
Exactly. 9 is nowhere. So we both agree. 9, you have a 0% chance of making the playoffs. You're not making the playoffs with 9 wins. You don't have conference wins. You cannot win 9 games and make the playoffs if you're the Buffalo Bills. If you win 10, your chances are still slim because you've got Cincy and Cleveland and these teams. Yes, they're going to beat up on each other, but 10 wins is not going to be fruitful for you because all of the tiebreakers are in favor of those other teams.
So really, I think what we're saying is the Bills have to win enough games to get to that Miami game where if you win, you're in.
Yes.
That's the best case scenario.
So you need to have 10 wins going into that, which means you would win 5 of 6, which is a challenge.
That's not happening. After what I saw last night, that is just not happening.
And then maybe going into that Dolphins game, the Dolphins have already locked up the division and they're sitting their players. And then the Bills get a win, right? So if that's the case,
I don't know, because look, they don't want to play Buffalo in the playoffs, right? So they might play to try to win. Even
that would
scenario.
be
But
that would be the dumbest thing anybody's ever done ever, right? You're not going to play your starters just to try and beat a team. At the end of the year, I think well, for a half, you're not playing them the whole game. You're benching them.
The Bills would just beat them by 30.5, right? They were,
Yeah, well, we did, right? So I mean,
exactly.
I still have faith that it could happen. Now they have to start showing us. We said the same thing last week, and they fell on their face and reached rock bottom here against the Broncos. Now it's a matter of put up or shut up. You have got to start moving in the right direction. I said it before too. All they needed to do was eke a win out versus the Broncos and they'd still be in it. Eke a win out versus the Jets and they'd still be in it. Right now, because you now have the reset and you're playing a tough opponent in my mind in the Jets, just win the game. You win the game, you're good. And then you can work on, okay, now we have to prepare for this really good opponent and we're going to their home to play, and take it from there. But if you can finish the season with 11 wins, you're a wild card team. 10 wins, you need a miracle. 9 wins, go home. You should have lost them all, right? And if they lose versus the Jets, or if they lose to both the Eagles and Kansas City, then the season is pretty much over. And you need to start thinking about the draft.
Yeah, they definitely are relying on a lot of external factors.
Yes,
right?
And they put themselves in that position.
Exactly, and that's the reality. All right, so, I'm not putting my money on the Bills making the playoffs. I'm just not doing it. But let's focus on the draft. Currently sitting at 17th. If you lose to the Jets, you'll probably be in the top 15, right? Then you go to Philly, and then you go to Kansas City. Could lose both of those. We could have a top 10 pick.
Yes, it very much likely. Yes, that is in play too.
That might be more likely than the playoff.
Best case scenario, make the playoffs with 11 wins. Second best scenario, lose every game, get a top 10 pick. So, I mean, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
It stinks because that's not where you want to be, but that's where we're at.
But we've had this conversation 100 times, and the Bills are a good team that's underperforming. So the 9-8 scenario is more likely. You end up with the 17th
mediocre,
pick like that, and that's just what it's going to be, right? But anyway, great conversation. We'll keep an eye. It's going to be fun, right? There's going to be some good games. I feel like the Chargers-Bills game is going to have meaning. Right.
Yes.
The Philadelphia, Kansas City games are going to be really fun to watch. I just hope the Bills don't get embarrassed, right? But
I don't think so because the defense, they're patched together, but they are playing well, right? I mean, they're holding teams. They're allowing a couple big plays, a couple bonehead mistakes here and there, but within reason to be winning games. They should be winning games. If the offense can be half of itself, we would be winning these games. And I think we can do that. We could play half of the offense and a good defense and beat Philly and beat Kansas City and beat Dallas. So it's still on the table. It's still on the table.
And I texted you this last night. My hope died with that game last night.
Rightfully so.
I am not hopeful. I don't think they're going to beat those 3 teams. I think it's a 1-2 scenario. You might beat one.
Let me put it this way. I won't be putting money on those games for the Bills. That's for sure. But unless there's a big line like plus 10, okay, I'll take the Bills plus 10. But it's, I do think that is still the hope, right? There's a glimmer of hope now that they've moved on from Dorsey. They've done the right thing. My mindset changed a little bit. So I see that glimmer of hope and I say, okay, this is the boost we need to start pushing us forward in the right direction.
Well, it's Tuesday going into Wednesday. You're already a day behind. You have a new coordinator, and you got a really tough game this weekend.
Yes, and no quarterback coach. Apparently, they're still figuring out how that's going to go moving forward. And
I don't think Kyle Allen's not qualified for that role. Matt Barkley's on another team. Davis Webb, I don't even know where he is. I think he's a coach somewhere. Anyway, it's not looking good. Not looking good.
Didn't he go to the Broncos at one point? Maybe, I don't know. But he might have been left down there. But yeah,
I thought he actually got a coaching role this year.
Did he? Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, yes, those guys aren't in the room anymore. So there's no obvious replacement at the QB coach position right now. So they're going to figure that out after this week because they have a game to prepare for, and it's already Wednesday, like you said. So they need to get practicing and start figuring it out.
Davis Webb is the Broncos quarterback coach.
He is still the Broncos quarterback coach. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So that's why the Bills lost.
He knew him well.
Yeah, he knew exactly what plays they were going to run. But anyway, thanks for tuning in with us. Misery loves company, right? So we'll be here every week talking about how bad the Bills are the rest of the year, and we'll be starting to focus on the draft, right? It's draft season. A lot of good wide receivers out there. I think they need another piece on offense. I think that's the focus, right? That's where we got to go.
Wide receiver. That's it.
Currently said at the 17th pick.
Enough is enough. Get the best wide receiver on the board. We've been saying that for 5 years now. Kincaid was a great piece, it looks like, but we need that wide receiver, and we obviously the writing is on the wall that Gabe Davis is not going to be a Buffalo Bill next year. So.
Everyone cue your mock drafts. PFF's the one I use. Their mock draft simulator, always a good one. The Draft Network also has a great one. It's draft season, baby. Here we go.
Thanks for kicking it with us.